Okay guys, for section 2.4, we're going to talk about symbolic form and deductive reasoning. Okay, so let's review some symbols here. The symbol for negating would be your squiggly line just like so. Your symbol for therefore would be 3 dots in the shape of a triangle. The symbol for a conditional statement, which means if, then, would have an arrow that looks like that. A biconditional means if and only if, and it has an arrow pointing in both directions, and has an arrow pointing up, and or has an arrow pointing down. Alright? Now, symbolic form says we're going to take whatever it tells us for P and Q, and we're going to write whatever they're telling us in the symbolic form. So, the example says let P represent it is snowing, let Q represent we do not have school. And right here it tells us to write not P. So we're going to take whatever P is and we're going to add not to it. So it is not snowing. For the second one here, we're going to do P and not Q. So I write P first. It is snowing. And for our symbol that's there, we do have school. Why am I saying we do? Because remember, in math, 2 negatives make a positive. So when we negate something that already has a not, that not goes away, okay? For our next one, we have Q if and only if P, because that's our biconditional, right? So we do not have school if and only if it is snowing. Alright? And then for our last one here, we have not Q, therefore not P. So for not Q, we're going to say that we do have school. Therefore, it is not snowing. Because we have to negate both pieces of that, okay? Alright. Now, for the next part of this, guys, we're going to talk about the deductive reasoning. That's where we're going to use facts, rules, or definitions or properties to reach a logical conclusion. The first one we're going to talk about is the law of detachment. The easiest way to think of the law of detachment is you're going to take something and you're going to break it apart. All right? So, to prove a statement true by the law of detachment, the 2 parts of the conditional statement, which are the hypothesis and the conclusion, must match the given and the conclusion. All right? So, the symbolic form of this is pretty simple. It says we have if P then Q is true, then they're just going to tell us that P is true. Whenever they give us that, then you know without a doubt in your mind that Q must be true, and that would be your answer. So let's try this with the statement that's given. It says if a ray bisects an angle, then it divides an angle into 2 congruent angles. Then it says ray AD bisects angle CAT. So ray AD bisects angle CAT says the same thing as this right here. If a ray bisects an angle. A ray did bisect the angle. They just made it a little bit more personal. Then it divides an angle into 2 congruent angles. So you would say angle CAT is divided into 2 congruent angles. Alright, so we just take whatever the first part is, they match up, therefore we kind of match up the second part like that, and that's our answer. Alright? So it's taking it and separating the sentence. Sometimes they make it personal, like I said. Law of syllogism, the easy way to remember this is it's silly to repeat. A lot of you might remember this from the transitive property. You said if P then Q, and Q then R. So you notice that the Q is repeated there. So what they've done is they just combined the P and R. So that's the transitive property. We do the same thing with the law of syllogism. It says if P then Q, if Q then R. The Q's are repeated, therefore we get rid of it and we say P then R. Alright? So let's try that with an example. It says, if a figure is a square, then the figure is a rectangle. If a figure is a rectangle, then the figure has 4 sides. You should notice that right here, then the figure is a rectangle, and if the figure is a rectangle is repeated from one sentence to the other. The key is it has to repeat at the end of the first and the beginning of the second. If that happens, you can write it as if a figure is a square, then the figure has 4 sides. And you just combine the 2 pieces that were left over, all right? So that's our notes for this section, guys. Make sure that you come into class with those completed. Have a good day.